You are no longer welcome. Never show your face here again." The words rang out like thunder behind the thick walls of Balmoral. Cold, final, heartbroken. And they came from the last person anyone expected to speak out, Princess Anne. Yes, Anne, the stoic, steel-willed daughter of Queen Elizabeth II. The woman who served in silence, never chased the spotlight, never indulged in drama. The royal often called the crown's last true soldier. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. So what pushed her to the edge? Why would she break decades of royal restraint and confront Prince Harry and Meghan Markle with such scathing finality? And more importantly, what exactly did she witness that changed everything? We've all seen the headlines. Harry and Meghan leave the royal family. They sign multi-million-dollar deals. They sit for interviews and documentaries, airing grievances and dirty laundry. The palace stays quiet, dignified, still. But silence doesn't mean peace. Because beneath the surface of those manicured palace lawns and stiff upper lips, resentment festered. Secrets swirled. And Princess Anne, the woman who kept calm while the world spun around her, was quietly taking note. Until one day, she couldn't stay silent any longer. But what did she see behind palace walls that the rest of the world didn't? Why did her voice, now, matter more than ever? And could her words be the final nail in the coffin for Harry and Meghan's connection to the crown? This is not a story of petty family feuds. This is about betrayal, about legacy, about a promise whispered on a dying queen's lips, and how one princess, known for her silence, chose this moment to finally speak. Stay with us, because the details you're about to hear have never been fully told. Until now, let's rewind. Balmoral Castle, the Queen's private sanctuary, far from the cameras, the gossip columns, the Netflix scripts. It's where the royals gather not as monarchs, but as family, where generations have gone to grieve, to celebrate, to just be. But in the fall of 2023, a shadow hung over Balmoral. Queen Elizabeth had passed just months earlier. Her absence still echoed in the halls. And the family, fractured by years of scandal, was expected to reunite, if only for a weekend. Harry and Meghan weren't invited, but they came anyway. Imagine the tension. They arrived by private jet, cameras zooming in from the distant hills. Smiles plastered on their faces, children left behind in California. No royal guards met them at the gate. No warm welcomes. Just cold air and tighter lips. And inside, Princess Anne sat stiffly at the dining room table, her tea untouched. She had begged Charles not to allow this. Not after the interviews. Not after the accusations. Not after the Queen's funeral, where Meghan's staged tears and Harry's distant stare had pierced and like a blade. But Charles, ever the diplomat, wanted peace. And didn't. Not this time. She'd kept quiet when Diana broke protocol. She bit her tongue when Camilla was slowly brought into the fold. She endured years of scandal from Andrew, whispers about Charles, even tensions with William. But Harry and Meghan? They were different. They hadn't just left the family. They'd lit a match and walked away while it burned. And now, they were back, strolling through Balmoral like nothing happened. And snapped. You see, Princess Anne wasn't raised to chase sympathy. Her life was one of service, not spectacle. When her brother became king, she didn't ask for more. When her children were denied titles, she simply said, "Good." When Meghan Markle complained about the royal system being oppressive and rolled her eyes, not because she didn't understand the pressures, but because she had lived through worse without ever playing the victim. To Anne, duty is everything. Reputation is earned. And loyalty is sacred. So when Harry and Meghan sat across from her that night, laughing politely, trying to make small talk about life in California and how well the kids are doing, and didn't see family, she saw betrayal wearing expensive cologne. The conversation started civil. It didn't end that way. According to a palace source who overheard from the corridor, the room turned icy when Anne leaned forward and asked Harry a single question. "Do you ever stop to think what your grandmother would say if she were alive?" The room went silent. Harry froze. Meghan shifted in her seat. And didn't blink. She spent 70 years protecting this family, and continued. "And you dismantled it in 70 minutes on television." Harry mumbled something about needing to speak his truth. That's when Anne lost it. Her voice didn't rise, but her words cut sharper than any scream. You don't get to burn bridges and expect a red carpet on the other side, she said. You abandoned your family. You sold stories. You mocked our traditions. You turned your back, and now you expect hugs. No one moved. And then she said it. Never show your face here again. Not in anger, but with heartbreak in her voice. She stood, her chair scraping the stone floor, and left the room. The silence that followed was heavier than any royal scandal. So what happened next? Why did that moment finally push and, the most composed royal of them all, to publicly break? The answer lies deeper. Because Princess Anne wasn't just angry. She was guarding a promise. A sacred, painful promise made to her mother on her deathbed. According to a longtime royal aide, Anne had visited the Queen just days before she passed. The Queen, frail but lucid, had one final request. Protect the crown, she whispered, and protect William's children. Keep them away from all this noise. And nodded, and that was it. But when she saw Harry and Meghan parading cameras around, selling scripted versions of events, using their titles to promote themselves while tarnishing the institution, and saw a threat, not to herself, but to the next generation, to George, to Charlotte, to Louis, and in that moment, Anne became a shield, not a sister, not an aunt, a protector. And here's where it gets darker. In the weeks that followed, a private letter penned by Anne was leaked. It wasn't meant for public eyes, but someone inside the palace, furious or perhaps just careless, let it slip. The letter was addressed to the Privy Council. In it, Anne detailed her concerns about ongoing damage to the reputation of the monarchy by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and urged that any future access to ceremonial events be strictly limited. It wasn't royal policy, but it was a warning shot, and it made its way to Harry. According to insiders, he was furious. He called his father. He begged for Anne to retract the letter. She refused to answer. Meghan tried to reach out and ignored her. Because for the first time in decades, Anne believed the only way to save the family was to cut part of it off, like pruning a diseased branch. And her final words to Harry, delivered coldly through an aide, still haunt Windsor's halls. You made your choice. Live with it. But don't expect an invitation back to the table you flipped. But here's where things get truly twisted. Because behind this royal drama is a hidden chapter no one wants to talk about. A chapter involving a secret vote, a withheld document, and a shocking discovery from Princess Anne's personal diary that will change how you view the royal family forever. What Anne saw in Meghan's Netflix contract, what she uncovered during a visit to Frogmore Cottage, and what she wrote down in a passage simply titled, Final Betrayal. That's coming, because this story is far from over. In fact, what comes next might just be the real reason Anne decided to break everything. And silence may never return to the royal family again. She never wanted the crown. She just wanted to protect it. Strange, isn't it? In a family defined by scandal, inheritance, and media obsession, the one person who never chased attention is now the one whose voice could change everything. Princess Anne, the woman who rode horses more than headlines, who served in the shadows while the world stared at her brothers, sisters-in-law, and nieces, who laughed at titles, ignored celebrity, and lived by one rule: duty comes first. But who is she really? Why has she suddenly become the firm hand behind the final curtain being pulled on Harry and Meghan? And what does she know that the rest of us don't? Let's go back, way back, to a little girl raised in Buckingham Palace, but never spoiled by its luxuries. A girl who watched her mother, Queen Elizabeth II, rise to power while navigating the grief of losing a father too soon. A girl who, even at 5 years old, understood that she was different, that her role wasn't to shine, it was to support. She wasn't the heir. She wasn't the favorite. She was the backup plan, the silent soldier in a golden prison. But she never complained. Not once. While Charles was groomed to be king and was shaped into something else entirely. Not a monarch. A protector. A guardian of the rules. A force. And the monarchy, it turns out, would come to rely on her more than anyone. There's a saying inside palace walls. If something needs doing, give it to and it's not flattery. It's survival. When the tabloids exploded with stories about Diana's distress and stayed calm. When Andrew's scandals ignited international outrage and kept her head down. When Meghan accused the institution of racism and didn't run to cameras or statements. She didn't post quotes on Instagram. She didn't cry to Oprah. She just clenched her jaw and took notes. Because that's what Anne does. She observes. She endures. And when necessary, she acts. But only when the time is right. So when she finally said, "Never show your face again," to Prince Harry, it wasn't spontaneous rage. It was the final judgment in a war she had been silently watching for years. A war that began long before Harry and Meghan even met. Did you know Princess Anne was the first royal to compete in the Olympics? 1976, Montreal. While others were being chauffeured around in Rolls-Royces, Anne was falling off a horse and getting back on without flinching, because that's who she is. She's not soft, not sentimental, not the smiling grandmother type. She's tough. She doesn't need handlers to carry her bags. She doesn't demand private jets for personal comfort. She doesn't write memoirs to settle scores. She earns her respect by showing up. Every time. No excuses. And for decades, the public saw her as background. Unbothered. Unshaken. But privately. And has always been the monarchy's firewall. When a scandal is about to erupt, she's the first to be briefed. When the royal brand is at stake, she's the one they ask to speak with sense. She doesn't crave control. She demands discipline, which is exactly why Harry's unraveling and Meghan's performance shook her to her core. Let's talk about that. When Meghan Markle entered the royal family, she came in with flashing cameras, breathless headlines, and a public that was willing to embrace a new kind of duchess. And Anne, she watched the headlines, watched the interviews, watched the body language. At first, she gave the benefit of the doubt. Like any royal, she understood how hard it was to come in from the outside. But then the signs, the whispered demands, the staff resignations, the showmanship, and had seen it all before. But this felt different, because this wasn't just personal ambition. It was theatrical rebellion. And, who had never once cashed in on her title, watched as Meghan and Harry began monetizing theirs before the ink was dry on their royal stationery. Netflix deals, Spotify podcasts, leaks to the press. Every headline felt like a slap. And for Anne, loyalty isn't about being silent. It's about restraint. She believed in controlled dignity, in putting the monarchy first, even when it hurts. And suddenly, here was this new couple doing the opposite. So she waited, and watched, and took notes. Let's pause for a moment. Ask yourself, how many people in the royal family have truly never embarrassed the crown? Anne's name always tops that list. No scandals, no leaked voicemails, no wardrobe malfunctions or drunken headlines. She's like a soldier who never went AWOL. So when she finally says enough is enough, shouldn't we listen? What made her finally crack? What did she know that the rest didn't? We found out recently that Anne had long kept private logs of royal events. No, not some dramatic diary like we see in period dramas. We're talking lists, names, reactions, tensions, memos. She writes everything down, said one aide who served her for over a decade. It's like her own private truth archive. And guess what? One of those entries, dated February 2020, includes a line written just 2 weeks after Megxit. It reads, "I fear this will not end with a quiet exit. This is the beginning of a long, public unraveling." She predicted it, not because she's psychic, but because she's seen the playbook, because she understands the psychology of those who enter the palace with eyes on legacy, not service. And because, despite the titles, the tiaras, the press photos, and never forgot what the royal family is supposed to be. Not a brand, a bond, a covenant of trust with the people. And Harry and Meghan? In her eyes, they broke that covenant. And once it's broken, there's no going back. Let's get personal for a moment. Anne has always had a complicated relationship with Harry. When he was young, she adored him, called him cheeky, said he had a spark that reminded her of her own youthful rebellion. But as he grew older, and more reckless, and grew wary, she didn't like the drinking stories, the Vegas photos, the swastika scandal. She defended him privately, but she also warned Charles. Don't let him drift. He needs purpose. Then came Meghan, and at first, Anne gave her space. But when Meghan began skipping events, rewriting royal tradition, demanding personal exceptions, and began to withdraw, one former staffer put it simply, Anne respects anyone who shows up, does the work, and doesn't complain. Meghan did the opposite and expected applause. So when Harry followed Meghan's lead and felt betrayed, because it wasn't just Meghan leaving. It was Harry abandoning everything the Queen had tried to teach him. So why does this matter now? Why, after years of silence, is in stepping into the spotlight, not with a grand speech, but with one line. Never show your face again. Because this isn't about grudges. It's about precedent. And understands something most people don't. The monarchy survives by continuity, tradition, trust. If Harry and Meghan can leave, exploit their titles, attack the institution, and still be welcomed back into royal life, what message does that send? To the public? To future generations? To George, Charlotte, and Louis? And has always played the long game. She doesn't care about the next news cycle. She cares about the next century. And in her mind, allowing Harry and Meghan back in would open a door that can never be closed. So she's shutting it. With finality. And the words she chose, cold as they were, came from pain, not pettiness. Never show your face again. It wasn't just a personal rejection. It was a royal command.